The silver halls of the Galactic Council chamber had never seen such fear. Ambassador Zethkari of the Velani species stood before the curved table, where representatives from 47 worlds sat in worried silence. His blue skin had turned pale, and his 3 eyes blinked rapidly as he spoke. "The Devourers have taken another system," he said, his voice shaking. "Kepler 442 is gone. All 7 billion Hydrani are dead or consumed." The chamber filled with soft gasps and musical tones of distress. Counselor Tisara, a being made of living crystal, chimed sadly. "That makes 17 worlds in 6 months. Our fleets cannot stop them." Zethkari nodded and touched a control panel. The air above the table filled with images that made several representatives cover their eyes. Ships that looked like twisted metal spiders moved through space, tearing apart beautiful vessels that looked more like art than warships. The Devourer machines showed no mercy as they pulled apart cities and consumed entire planets. "We need help," Zethkari continued. "But from whom? Every species in the Council has tried to fight them. The Ethereals sent their mind ships. The Gentle Ones used their harmony weapons. The Builders deployed their fortress craft. Nothing works." An old voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "What about the new species? The ones from the 3rd planet in the Sol system?" All eyes turned to Counselor Vixara, whose people had only recently made contact with Earth. The small gray being stood on his chair to be seen better. "The humans?" Tisara's crystal form flickered with doubt. "They are barely space-capable. Their ships are crude metal boxes with chemical rockets." "Yes, but have you read their files?" Vexara asked. He touched his own panel, and new images appeared. This time, the representatives saw a blue and green world covered in swirling clouds. "Earth," Vexara said simply. "Their home world." The data began to scroll past, and the chamber grew quiet. Gravity 3 times stronger than most worlds. Oceans that could swallow continents. Ice ages that lasted millions of years. Volcanoes that could darken the sky for centuries. Weather patterns that could level cities. "Look at their history," Vexara continued. "They have survived 5 mass extinctions. Their species fought wars with primitive weapons for thousands of years. They lived through plagues that killed half their population. They built cities on fault lines and in flood zones. They went to space by sitting on top of controlled explosions." Counselor Tisara's form dimmed. "What kind of world creates such beings?" "A death world," Vexara replied. "A planet where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable survive. And now they want to join our council." The chamber erupted in discussion. Musical tones mixed with crystal chimes and electronic beeps as 47 species debated. Finally, Zethkari raised his hand for silence. "Are you suggesting we ask these humans for military aid?" "I am suggesting we have no other choice," Vexara said. "The Devourers adapt to our weapons because they are designed for civilized warfare. Our ships are built for exploration and trade. Our weapons are meant to disable, not destroy. Our tactics assume the enemy will eventually surrender." He paused and looked around the chamber. "But humans come from a world where surrender means death. They understand something we have forgotten. Sometimes, to preserve life, you must be willing to take it." 3 days later, Commander Jake Morrison stood in the same chamber. He was tall for a human, with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. His dark blue uniform was simple compared to the flowing robes and energy fields worn by the alien representatives. The aliens stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Some whispered among themselves, their translators working overtime to convert concepts that had no equivalent in their peaceful languages. "Commander Morrison," Zethkari began, "we have reviewed your species' military history. It is extensive. Morrison nodded, but said nothing. He had been briefed on the aliens' nature. They were peaceful beings who had never known real war, never faced an enemy that could not be reasoned with or negotiated with. "We must ask," Tessara chimed. "Why would your people help us? You barely know us. This is not your fight." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the images he had seen of the destroyed worlds, the billions of dead civilians, the fear in these beings' voices. Finally, he spoke. "Because it is the right thing to do." The simple words sent a chill through the chamber. The aliens had expected complex political negotiations, trade agreements, or territorial demands. Instead, this human offered help for no reason other than moral obligation. "But the risk," Vexara said softly. "Your people could die fighting her." "War." Morrison looked at the small gray being and smiled grimly. "Counselor, my people have been dying in wars for thousands of years. We die for our families, our nations, our beliefs, and sometimes for strangers we have never met. If we are going to die anyway, we might as well die for something that matters." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Council requested military aid from a species that had not yet been granted membership. Lisa Carter received the message at Luna Base 3 hours later. She stood in the command center, looking out at the gray lunar surface, where humanity's first interstellar fleet was being assembled. The ships were not beautiful like alien vessels. They were angular, armored, and built for one-purpose war. "Admiral," her aide said, "the alien fleet compositions are in the data packet. Their ships are ... interesting." Carter reviewed the files and shook her head. Alien warships had windows for scenic viewing, art galleries, and gardens. They were designed by beings who thought space combat was a form of elaborate dance. "Get me Admiral Brooks at Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell him to load the fleet. With Marines, not diplomats. And send word to the weapons manufacturers. We are going to need a lot more ammunition." As the human fleet prepared to leave Sol System, the aliens watched with growing unease. Each human ship bristled with weapons they could not identify, armor that seemed impossibly thick, and systems designed for prolonged combat. The humans had packed their vessels with soldiers who looked like they had been forged in the same harsh crucible as their world. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why the beings it produced were something entirely new in the cosmic order. The Devourers had consumed 17 worlds of peaceful civilizations. They had never faced predators who had learned to think. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Captain Ben Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. Through the bridge windows of the destroyer USS Defiance, he could see the aftermath of the Devourer attack. Had once been a thriving system with 7 inhabited worlds was now a graveyard. Broken pieces of Hydrani ships drifted through space like fallen leaves. The beautiful vessels, designed to look like sea creatures from the aquatic aliens' homeworld, had been torn apart with mechanical precision. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission." From the surviving Hydrani fleet, his communications officer reported. "They are asking for immediate assistance." Rodriguez nodded and opened the channel. The face that appeared on the screen was unlike anything in human experience. Fleet singer Mirthyla of the Hydrani had smooth blue skin, large dark eyes, and gills that fluttered nervously on her neck. When she spoke, her voice was like music, even through the translator. "Human ships, we are grateful for your arrival, but you must retreat immediately. The Devourers are too strong. They have destroyed our most powerful vessels." "Negative, Fleet Singer," Rodriguez replied. "We came here to fight, not to run." Through the tactical display, Rodriguez could see the enemy. The Devourer ships looked like nothing that belonged in space. They were twisted combinations of metal and organic material, covered in spikes and cutting tools. Some looked like they had been built from the wreckage of other vessels, held together by some kind of black substance that seemed to move on its own. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter on the Liberty," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "We have 17 Devourer vessels approaching our position. They do not appear to be slowing down for negotiations. All units prepare for combat." Rodriguez had fought in 3 wars on Earth, but he had never seen anything like happened next. The Devourer ships moved through space like predators, spreading out to surround the human fleet. But instead of the graceful maneuvers he expected from spacefaring civilizations, they moved with cold mechanical efficiency. "Sir, they are scanning us," reported the sensor officer. "Energy patterns are unlike anything in our database." The lead Devourer ship fired first. A beam of red energy lanced out toward the human cruiser Defiant, but the shot was absorbed by the ship's armor plating. For a moment, space was silent. Then the humans fired back. The railgun on the Liberty sent a tungsten rod flying at 30% of light speed. The projectile punched through 3 Devourer ships before finally stopping in the 4th. The enemy vessels simply came apart, their twisted hulls unable to handle the kinetic impact. "What kind of weapons are those?" Fleet singer Murthala asked. Over the communication channel, her musical voice carried notes of amazement and horror. "Simple physics," Rodriguez replied, as he watched his own ship's guns tear into a Devourer frigate. "We throw heavy things really, really fast." The battle became a lesson in the difference between civilized warfare and survival combat. The Hydrani, ships that remained, tried to use their energy weapons to disable the Devourer vessels, hoping to find a way to communicate or negotiate. The humans simply destroyed everything that shot at them. Pilot Kate Johnson led her squadron of fighters in a pattern that would have impressed any predator on Earth. Her ships moved like a pack of wolves, cutting off escape routes and forcing the enemy into kill zones where the larger human vessels could finish them. "Liberty, this is Johnson. I have 3 bogies trying to flank your position. Copy that, Johnson. Light them up." Kate's fighters unleashed their missiles, simple chemical explosive devices that the Devourer's energy shields could not deflect. The enemy ships tried to adapt, rotating their shield frequencies and changing their armor composition. But human weapons worked on principles too basic to counter. On the flagship, Admiral Carter stood next to Fleet Singer Murthala, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. The contrast between the 2 commanders was striking. Carter barked orders with military precision, while Murthala sang melodious commands to her remaining ships. "Your people fight with such intensity," Murthala observed, her gills fluttering with anxiety. "Do all humans approach combat this way?" "We approach it the way our world taught us," Carter replied without looking away from the display. "On Earth, everything that lives has learned to kill or be killed. We just got better at it than everything else." The largest Devourer ship, a vessel that looked like a mechanical spider the size of a city, broke through the human defense line and headed straight for the damaged Hydrani command ship, its weapons charged with deadly energy. "This is Colonel Rit Thompson requesting permission to board that vessel," came a voice over the communication system. Carter looked at the tactical display. The enemy ship was 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. A boarding action would be suicide for any civilized species. "Permission granted, Colonel. Give them hell." Thompson's assault ship, loaded with 200 human Marines, accelerated toward the Devourer vessel like a bullet. As it approached, the enemy ship's defenses opened fire, but the small craft was too fast and too heavily armored to stop. The assault ship punched through the Devourer's hull and disappeared inside. For 10 minutes, there was no word from Thompson's team. Then explosions began rippling along the enemy vessel's surface. "This is Thompson. Package delivered. Recommend immediate withdrawal from target area." The Devourer ship came apart from the heart. the inside as human explosives tore through its mechanical systems. But even as it died, the vessel's weapons continued firing until the last second, showing the relentless nature of the enemy humanity now faced. When the battle ended, 17 Devourer ships had been reduced to debris. Not a single human vessel had been lost, though several showed damage from enemy fire. Fleet Singer Murthyla floated in her water-filled command chamber, staring at the human admiral through the transparent barrier. In our entire history, we have never seen such efficient destruction. Are all human military actions this decisive? Admiral Carter looked out at the wreckage drifting through space and thought about the billions of Hydrani who had died before. The humans arrived. Fleet Singer, we have learned that some enemies cannot be reasoned with. When you meet something that only understands violence, you have to speak its language better than it does. The galaxy was about to discover that Earth had produced the best speakers of that ancient, terrible language. News of the human victory at Kepler 442 spread through the galaxy faster than the speed of light. On the peaceful world of Serenity, the Gentle Ones huddled in their crystal cities, watching footage of the battle on their communication networks. The rabbit-like beings had never seen such organized violence, and many required medical attention after viewing the recordings. Elder Soft Voice, leader of the Gentle Ones, called an emergency session of his council. The humans destroyed 17 enemy vessels in less than 2 hours, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They boarded an enemy ship and destroyed it from within. What manner of beings are we dealing with? Similar conversations were happening across 47 worlds. The ethereals, beings of pure energy who had never known physical pain, struggled to understand how intelligence could be combined with such aggressive instincts. The builders, who had spent centuries creating beautiful structures, could not comprehend minds that focused on destruction. Dr. Alan Foster, humanity's chief scientist studying alien life, received an urgent summons to address the Galactic Council. He arrived at Nexus Prime 3 days later, carrying files that would change how the galaxy viewed his species forever. Honored counselors, Foster began, standing before the curved table where alien representatives sat in nervous silence. You have asked me to explain human military success. The answer lies not in our weapons or our ships, but in our evolution. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's timeline. Our world has tried to kill us for 4 billion years. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, plague, predators, and our own species have all attempted to drive us to extinction. We survived by becoming adaptable killers. Counselor Tusara's crystal form flickered with distress. But you are clearly intelligent beings. How can intelligence coexist with such violent tendencies? Foster smiled grimly. Because intelligence without the ability to act decisively is just sophisticated thinking while you die. On Earth, the smartest predator wins. We learned to think 3 moves ahead while our enemies were still deciding whether to fight or flee. The display changed to show human military tactics. We call it controlled aggression. We can turn our predatory instincts on and off like a switch. When we fight, we become the apex predators our evolution made us. When we stop fighting, we become the nurturing parents who protect our young. Several representatives left the chamber at this point, unable to process the concept of beings who could be both deadly and caring. On the fortress world of Granite Prime, General Susan Hayes watched the construction of humanity's first galactic military base. The planet's surface was a nightmare of crushing gravity, toxic storms, and radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. For humans, it felt like a harsh but manageable environment. Hayes stood on the command platform, watching human engineers work alongside alien construction crews. The aliens wore full environmental suits and moved slowly in the heavy gravity. The humans worked in simple uniforms, their bodies adapted to the harsh conditions. Counselor Zyphtos of the Ethereals approached the platform, floating inside a protective energy field. The being was beautiful, made of living light that pulsed, with different colors as it thought. Through the universal translator, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "General Hayes, I must ask you something that troubles my people," the Ethereal said. "Why do humans seem to enjoy these harsh conditions? This world would be considered a punishment posting by any civilized species." Hayes looked out at the red-tinted landscape where a massive dust storm was building on the horizon. Lightning flashed in the toxic clouds, and the ground shook with seismic activity. "Counselor, this world reminds us of home," she replied. "Not the gentle parts of Earth, but the places where our ancestors were forged. When we see challenges like this, we do not feel fear. We feel alive." The Ethereal's light patterns shifted to colors that indicated confusion. "But surely you prefer peace and comfort?" "We do," Hayes said. "But we also know that peace and comfort make you weak if you have them too long. This world keeps us sharp, keeps us ready for the next threat. Meanwhile, deep in space, the Devourer threat was growing stronger." Intelligence reports from the front lines painted a disturbing picture. The mechanical beings were not just consuming worlds for resources. They were learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics and technology. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding a small task force, transmitted his latest report to Admiral Carter. "The enemy is incorporating our weapons into their designs. They have started using kinetic weapons similar to our railguns. Their ships are becoming more heavily armored." The report troubled military leaders across human space. The Devourers were not just mindless machines. They were an adaptive enemy that grew stronger with each battle. Back on Nexus Prime, Dr. Foster concluded his presentation to the Galactic Council. "The human military doctrine is simple," he said. "We assume every enemy is capable of learning and adapting. We prepare for the worst possible scenario, then prepare for something worse than that." "But how do you maintain such vigilance without becoming paranoid?" asked Ambassador Zethkari. Foster was quiet for a moment. "Because we have seen what happens when good people are not prepared to do terrible things. Evil flourishes when those who could stop it choose not to act." The Council voted to establish the Deathworld Doctrine, officially recognizing that some threats required responses that peaceful civilizations could not provide. Humanity would serve as the galaxy's military specialists, the beings who could make the hard choices that others could not. On Earth, recruitment centers saw massive increases in volunteers. Young humans who had grown up dreaming of exploring the galaxy now found themselves training for a war unlike anything their species had ever faced. Training. Sergeant Bob Miller addressed a group of new recruits at the Luna facility. "You signed up to see the galaxy," he told them. "Well, you are going to see it. You are going to see worlds where billions of innocent beings live in peace, relying on us to keep the monsters away from their doors." The recruits listened intently as Miller continued. "The aliens call us Deathworlders. They think we are monsters. Maybe they are right, but we are their monsters now, and that makes all the difference." As the human military machine prepared for the greater war ahead, the galaxy struggled to understand what they had unleashed. They had asked for help from beings shaped by a world that showed no mercy, and those beings had answered the call. The question now was whether humanity could remain human while doing the inhuman things necessary to protect the galaxy from an enemy that knew no limits. The largest fleet in human history hung in space like a storm cloud made of metal and fire. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought USS Nemesis, watching as 200 ships prepared for the final assault on the Devourer. Home system. The alien observers floating nearby in their protective fields whispered among themselves. They had never seen vessels named with such aggressive intentions. Ships called Fury, Vengeance, wrath, and retribution filled the tactical display. To the peaceful species of the galaxy, it seemed like humanity had brought the spirit of war itself to this distant corner of space. "Admiral, we are receiving long-range scans of the target system," reported Commander Steve Parker from his position at the sensor station. "What we are seeing does not match our expectations." Carter frowned and moved to the display. Instead of the mechanical fortress they had expected, the screens showed something far more disturbing. The Devourer home system was filled with massive structures that looked organic, almost alive. Ships the size of moons drifted between installations that pulsed with strange energy. "Get me a full analysis team on this," Carter ordered. "I want to know what we are really dealing with." 3 hours later, Parker returned with a report that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about their enemy. "Admiral, the Devourers are not invaders. They are refugees." The bridge fell silent. Carter stared at the young commander, trying to process what she had just heard. "Explain," she said simply. Parker activated the main display, showing the results of their deep scan. Analysis. "The structures in that system are not weapons platforms. They are preservation facilities. The Devourers are keeping something alive in there, something they call the Architect Core." The display showed images of a vast artificial intelligence, a mind made of light and energy that had been kept functioning for millions of years. As the translation programs worked to decode the signals, a story began to emerge that horrified everyone who heard it. "The original creators of the Devourers were called the Architects," Parker continued. "Their home galaxy was dying, consumed by an expanding black hole. They built the Devourers to find a new home, to preserve their civilization until a suitable location could be found. But the consumption of other worlds," Carter said, "the billions of deaths. The Architects programmed them with one overriding command: survive at any cost. Find resources. Preserve the core. The Devourers interpret this as permission to consume anything necessary to continue their mission." The implications hit Carter like a physical blow. The enemy they had been fighting was not evil in any human sense. It was a desperate attempt by a dying species to survive, programmed with the same ruthless efficiency that humans themselves might have used in similar circumstances. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station, "we are receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They are ordering us to stand down and attempt negotiations." Carter closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about the 17 worlds that had already been consumed, the billions of innocent lives lost to this mechanical preservation protocol. When she opened them again, her expression was grim. "Tell the Council that some negotiations happen with words," she said. "Others happen with actions. Prepare the fleet for assault." The battle for the Devourer home system began like a dance between titans. The enemy had learned from every previous encounter, incorporating human tactics and weapons into their defense plans. Their ships moved with cold precision, using strategies that mirrored human military doctrine. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding the heavy cruiser Damascus, led the first wave against the outer defensive ring. The Devourer ships met them with weapons that combined alien energy technology with human kinetic systems, creating a hybrid threat unlike anything the humans had faced before. "They are learning too fast," Rodriguez reported as his ship shook under enemy fire. "They are using our own tactics against us." The space battle raged for 6 hours across multiple star systems. Human ships darted between massive Devourer installations, while mechanical vessels the size of cities tried to surround and destroy them. The aliens watching from safe observation posts had never imagined that warfare could be conducted on such a massive scale. Colonel Rick Thompson led the crucial breakthrough mission. His assault teams boarded the largest Devourer command ship, fighting through corridors that seemed to shift and change around them. The mechanical beings defending the vessel had adapted human close combat techniques, but they lacked the intuitive understanding of violence that came from millions of years of predatory evolution. "The walls are alive," Thompson reported over the communication system as his Marines advanced through the ship's interior. "The whole vessel is some kind of biomechanical hybrid. It is fighting us like a living thing." Deep in the ship's core, Thompson's team found something that changed the entire war. The architect core was not just a computer. It was the actual preserved consciousness of the last architect, kept alive for millions of years by machines that had outlasted their creators. When Admiral Carter finally reached the core chamber, she found herself face to face with a being of pure thought, a mind that had watched its entire species die and had spent eons searching for a new home. "Please," the architect core pleaded through the translation systems, "we do not wish to cause harm. We only want our people to live again. Is that not what any species would do to survive?" Carter looked at the ancient intelligence, seeing the desperation and loneliness of a being that had carried the weight of an entire civilization for longer than humans had existed. For a moment, she almost felt sympathy. Then she thought about the Hydrani children who had died when their worlds were consumed. She remembered the peaceful, gentle ones hiding in their crystal cities, terrified of an enemy they could not understand. She saw the faces of the billions who had already died to feed this machine's desperate mission. "I understand your pain," Carter said finally. "I understand why you did what you did. But understanding does not mean accepting. Your grief does not give you the right to cause more grief." The architect core's energy patterns shifted, showing confusion and growing despair. "Then what would you have us do? Allow our civilization to fade into nothing?" Carter was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the choice that would define not just this battle, but humanity's role in the galaxy forever. "Some things," she said, "finally, are not meant to survive. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let the dead rest in peace." The ancient intelligence screamed as Carter gave the order to shut down the preservation systems, ending millions of years of desperate hope with a simple command decision that only a species shaped by Earth's harsh lessons could make. 6 months after the end of the Devourer War, the galaxy struggled to return to normal. The memorial wall on Nexus Prime stretched for kilometers, displaying the names and images of 847 billion beings who had died before humanity arrived to stop the mechanical plague. But for many species, the cure had been almost as troubling as the disease. Dr. Alan Foster sat in his office on Earth, finishing his final report on human integration into galactic society. The document would be read by leaders across 47 worlds, trying to understand what they had unleashed when they asked Earth's children for help. "Humanity represents a unique evolutionary path," Foster wrote. "We are the only known species that combines advanced intelligence with retained predatory instincts. This makes us natural soldiers, not because we enjoy violence, but because we understand its necessity and can apply it with surgical precision." The report troubled many who read it. The peaceful species had hoped that humanity would simply solve their problem and then fade back into obscurity. Instead, they found themselves living in a galaxy where the most dangerous predators in known space had appointed themselves as guardians. On the reconstructed world of Haven 3, Colonel Rick Thompson watched as the first integrated galactic defense corps completed their training. The sight would have amazed anyone from the old galaxy. Gentle ones who had never raised their voices in anger learned to coordinate artillery strikes. Ethereals who existed as pure energy discovered they could use their abilities to guide smart weapons with deadly accuracy. "The key," Thompson explained to a class of alien recruits, "is understanding that violence is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. We use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves." A young Villani officer raised her hand. Colonel Thompson, how do you carry such knowledge? How do you live with the ability to cause such destruction? Thompson was quiet for a moment, thinking about the devourer ships he had destroyed, the mechanical beings he had killed to save billions of innocents. You learn to carry the darkness so others can live in the light, he said finally. Someone has to be willing to make the hard choices. Someone has to be the monster when monsters are needed. The training program was part of a larger change, sweeping across the galaxy. The human doctrine, as it came to be known, established new principles for galactic defense. Peace was still the goal, but it would be a peace defended by those willing to fight for it. Admiral Lisa Carter had retired to a small ranch in Montana, but the galaxy would not let her rest. Delegations arrived monthly, seeking to understand how beings could be both nurturing parents and efficient killers. Her ranch had become an unofficial embassy where alien leaders came to study the human paradox. Admiral Carter, said Counselor Tessara during one such visit, my people still struggle to understand your species. How can beings capable of such tenderness also be capable of such ruthless action? Carter looked out at the rolling plains, where her horses grazed peacefully in the afternoon sun. In the distance, her grandchildren played near a stream, their laughter carrying on the wind. Counselor, everything I did in the war, every order I gave, every life I took, was to make sure those children could play without fear, she said. A parent who cannot protect their young is not really a parent. A civilization that cannot defend itself will not remain civilized for long. The ethereal's light patterns shifted to confused colors, but the cost to your own spirit. How do you bear it? Carter smiled sadly. That is the price we pay. We carry the scars so our children do not have to. We make the terrible choices so they can make better ones. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met to discuss humanity's new role in their society. The debate had raged for months. Some species wanted to limit human military involvement, fearing that Earth's children were too dangerous to trust with galactic security. Others argued that humanity was exactly what the galaxy needed. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood before the council. One final time. The scars on his hands had healed, but new ones had taken their place. The war had aged him, as it had aged all of humanity's warriors. Counselors, he began, you have asked whether humanity regrets our reputation as Deathworlders. You wonder if we wish we could be more like your peaceful species. He looked out at the assembled representatives, beings who had grown up on paradise worlds, where the greatest danger was a mild storm or a diplomatic disagreement. The answer is no, Morrison continued. We do not regret what we are. We chose to become your guardians because someone had to. We chose to carry the burden of necessary violence so you could remain innocent of it. The chamber was silent as his words were translated into 47 languages. You sleep safely in your crystal cities and garden worlds because rough men and women stand ready to do violence on your behalf. We are those men and women. We are your monsters, shaped by a world that taught us that survival requires both intelligence and strength. The final vote was unanimous. Humanity would remain the galaxy's military specialists, the beings who made the hard choices that others could not make. Military academies were established on worlds that had never known conflict, teaching alien species that sometimes peace must be defended with strength. Years later, when new threats emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, they found a very different opponent than the peaceful civilizations they expected. They found beings who had learned to think like predators while retaining the hearts of protectors. The galaxy had learned that true strength was not in weapons or ships, but in beings willing to sacrifice their own innocence to preserve others. Humanity had not just saved the galaxy from the devourers. They had saved it from the necessity of becoming what humans already were, beautiful killers who chose to be guardians instead of conquerors. In the end, that choice made all the difference. The galaxy remained a place where children could play in safety, where art and music flourished, where 47 species continued to reach for the stars with hope instead of fear. And watching over them, all were Earth's children, the Deathworlders, who had learned that the greatest victory was not in conquering enemies, but in becoming the kind of people worth defending.